We live in an age saturated with stimulation. Desire is everywhere, marketed, broadcast, monetized. Everything around us pulls on the strings of instinct. Images designed to provoke. Algorithms that feed attraction. An endless echo of appetite. And in this sea of temptation, the modern man is told, give in, indulge, just react. What? The culture doesn't just tolerate impulsivity, it rewards it. But Carl Jung saw a different path. Not a path of repression nor denial, but of integration. He believed that the most powerful man is not the one who obeys every impulse, nor the one who kills it, but the one who understands it, absorbs it, and channels it. In a world that weaponizes sexual energy to control behavior, the man who desexualizes his mind, who detaches from compulsive reaction, doesn't become less. He becomes dangerous in a new way, focused, sovereign, unshakable. What does it mean to desexualize the mind? It doesn't mean the absence of desire. It means the mastery of it. It means stepping outside the automatic pull of lust, and choosing clarity over craving. It's not the suppression of attraction, but the refusal to be enslaved by it. Jung taught that libido, psychic energy, is not confined to sex. It is the raw force behind everything: creativity, ambition, transformation, thought. And when this energy is not unconsciously leaked through compulsive behaviors, it becomes fuel. It becomes power. The tragedy of modern culture is not that men have desire. It's that they are taught to live in it rather than above it. They are taught that to be a man is to chase, to conquer, to never question the pull. But this is not masculinity. It is addiction dressed up as identity. And the cost is staggering: scattered focus, shallow relationships, lost time, weakened will. Jung believed in the transformation of instincts. Not their elimination but their evolution. He saw that the man who blindly obeys his lower drives is not free. He is possessed. By fantasy, by habit, by images that are not his own. But the man who brings awareness to these drives, who sees them, studies them, questions them, begins to gain a new kind of control. He is no longer pulled by every figure on the screen, every echo of pleasure. He doesn't confuse stimulation with truth. And that makes him rare. In his writing, Jung often returned to the symbol of alchemy, not as chemistry but as the inner process of refining the self. Desexualized mind is an alchemical product. It is what happens when raw desire is distilled into direction. When attraction becomes attention. When lust, rather than being denied or acted on, is examined and transformed. But this process is not easy. It is not glamorous. It is not celebrated. The man who chooses this path will be misunderstood. He will be mocked. He will be called cold, distant, repressed. But he knows the truth, that he has chosen the harder discipline. That he has stepped outside the cycle of dopamine and distraction. That he no longer moves toward what seduces him, but toward what strengthens him. To desexualize the mind is to take your power back from the world's images. It is to reclaim your focus. To walk into a room and not be mentally hijacked by appearances. To speak to beauty without surrendering your direction. To stop leaking your energy into fantasy and begin investing it into form. Jung would say, this is individuation in action. Because the man who no longer needs to be validated by conquest, who no longer orients himself by attraction, who no longer explains himself through his desirability, that man is finally becoming whole. Not because he has eliminated desire, but because desire is no longer his master. In a world that says, you are what you want, the man who chooses stillness, focus, and discipline doesn't become invisible, he becomes untouchable. His energy is no longer diffused. His mind is not a playground for fantasy but a forge. And in that forge something ancient and unbreakable is being rebuilt: the will. This is not about celibacy. It's not about shame. It's about power. It's about what happens when a man becomes too committed to his evolution to be distracted by passing stimulation. When he begins to feel how much of his soul he has given away, scroll after scroll, glance after glance, click after click, and decides to stop. Not to punish himself, but to remember who he is. The desexualized mind is not numb. It is awake. It sees the same beauty, the same allure, but it doesn't need to possess it. It respects it without chasing. It notices without collapsing. And that calm, that inner stillness becomes magnetic. Because in a culture of compulsive hunger, the man who does not hunger becomes the one everyone wants to follow, but cannot control. That is the beginning of true presence. And true presence cannot be bought, seduced, or faked. It comes only when you have reclaimed your attention from the noise. When you have made peace with your desires, not by giving in to them but by elevating them. When you stop asking the world to feed your ego, and start feeding your soul with direction, purpose, stillness. That is the power Jung saw in the man who faces himself fully, not a man who kills his desire but who carries it wisely, who chooses how and where it moves, who doesn't explain it, who doesn't flaunt it, but who, in his silence, reveals a force that needs no words. To reclaim the mind from compulsion is not a small thing. It's not a weekend practice or a productivity hack. It's a fundamental act of rebellion against the way modern life conditions you to exist, reactive, scattered, endlessly seeking. When a man desexualizes his mind, not by suppressing it but by transforming it, he is not becoming less of a man. He is becoming the author of his own direction. And that shift, invisible on the surface, radiates through everything he touches. Carl Jung did not reduce libido to sex. He understood it as the very core of life energy, the psychic fuel behind creation, growth, drive. When this energy remains unconscious, it seeks escape through fantasy, compulsive desire, scrolling, consuming. It runs in circles looking for satisfaction in the temporary. But when it becomes conscious, when it is integrated, it becomes vision. It stops chasing pleasure and starts building purpose. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of transcendent function, the psychological bridge between instinct and awareness. When a man learns not to obey his urges but to hold them, to sit in the heat of desire without fleeing it, he gains something rare, the ability to transmute that heat into action, into clarity, into strategy. That's not repression. That's sovereignty. Look around. How much of modern male identity is entangled in seduction, conquest, image? We define value by how desired we are, how many women we attract, how much sexual validation we can extract from the world. And yet, for all this obsession, there is so little inner power, so little calm, so little freedom. Because we are chasing recognition rather than embodying direction. Jung understood this trap. He knew that when libido is not harnessed, it gets hijacked. The unconscious will always find an outlet. If you don't work with your desire, it will work you. You'll find yourself restless, unfocused, needing stimulation just to feel alive. And worse, you'll begin to mistake distraction for meaning. But when a man chooses discipline, not because he hates pleasure but because he respects energy, something ancient comes back online. The mind sharpens. The body settles. The soul begins to speak again. Not in noise but in knowing. This is the power of the desexualized mind. It hears itself. It is no longer drowning in appetite. And in this stillness, a new kind of creativity emerges. You begin to create instead of consume. You begin to channel your drive into movement, into writing, into building, into leading, into living with intention. The energy you once spilled on fantasy now burns at the center of your work, of your discipline, of your presence. Jung believed that every man carries a hidden potential, buried beneath his projections. But it can only be reached through confrontation with the self. That confrontation is uncomfortable. You begin to notice your patterns. The way your eyes search for stimulation. The way your mind drifts toward distraction when things get difficult. The ways in which you've made desire a replacement for direction. But in this awareness, the transformation begins. Not all at once but gradually, consistently. You stop needing. You start choosing. This is not a call to monkhood. It's not about denying your nature. It's about owning it, fully, quietly, deeply. So that when you walk into a room, you do not bring hunger. You bring gravity. The kind of gravity that only comes from a man who has nothing to prove and nothing to chase. Because his energy is his own. And because he knows what he's building. That kind of presence is rare and threatening. Because it cannot be bought. It cannot be seduced. It cannot be distracted. The desexualized man sees through the illusions of image. He's not interested in being liked or followed or admired. He's interested in truth, in growth, in the long road. And the long road demands energy. To protect your energy in this world is an act of spiritual warfare. Everything is designed to drain it. Every screen, every ad, every performance of sex is power. But the man who reclaims his mind, who redirects his libido toward evolution, walks outside that system. He is not numb. He is alert. Not rigid but rooted. He doesn't brag about his control. He simply lives it, Jung would call this the individuation of the masculine. The emergence of a man who does not run from his shadow, who does not fear his longing, but who stands with it, works with it, and transforms it. This man is not defined by his urges. He is defined by what he builds with them. And that makes him not just strong, but free. Freedom, in the deepest sense, is not doing whatever you want. It's not needing to do everything you want. It's choosing where your energy goes. It's walking past the noise without reacting. It's seeing beauty without collapsing into lust. It's being fully present without being pulled apart. That is the man who leads. That is the man who cannot be manipulated. That is the man the world cannot touch. Because he has already claimed the one territory no one else can govern. His own mind.